the internet becomes so polluted, so junky that people give up on it. Like, it's so much disinformation, so much manipulation that people just give up on it and it dies.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, he thinks that AI is going to kill the internet. And we're not going back to 2020. We're not going back to 2012, 13, 14, 15, Barack Obama. We're not going back to 2008. We're not going back to
hope and changing and
hope and change. And then we have to start over in some way. And maybe this is the time to do it. The folks like us who are on our side that we lost more than the other side won. And so I think if there's another election, and if there is, this is my hope.
I see what's happening to them who support Trump and how their moral authority has, if they ever had any, it is shattered to the ground.
The truth is often insulting.
Charles Blow, best-selling author, and has been a New York Times opinion columnist since 2008.
I want a structure where everyone can operate without an oppressive force on top of them holding them down.
Don Lemon.
I once was lost in my search for God in America. You talked about a situation where as a child there was an older boy in your neighborhood who was a teenager.
He has a unique ability to attract headlines.
Doesn't the buck stop with you? Choose your question carefully. There's 5 minutes left.
I don't need to understand everything about how trans people feel and when they have surgery. I don't need to understand any of that. I know this is a human being. I do not believe in human suffering. I do not believe in using the state to make a person suffer. It is about bullying. It is about humanity. I will not stand on this playground and let you pick on the small one.
How do you feel as a black man in this moment? Obviously, we've known each other for a long time. I've always been, even though I've known you for a long time, we joke around a lot, we kid each other, we tease each other. I've always been a huge admirer of you as a person and also you as a professional talent. You are so talented and so smart.
Likewise. Look at this.
Yeah. So let's start. Do you want to start?
Go.
Okay, so why'd you move to Atlanta?
So I wrote a book about Black people returning to the South. For power and consolidation of populations. And in the course of it, I convinced myself that I had to do it too. It made sense to me, not just as a theory, but as a very real thing that was a roadmap for my own life that on some level, it was unpublishable without my own action.
What do you mean unpublishable?
What does it look like for the guy in Brooklyn to tell everybody?
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So there was that, but there was also, I had really convinced myself in the writing that it was the most powerful thing that I could.
In some way that you have to be in New York, kind of, if you work for the New York Times, if you are a writer, if you're in this media business, that you have to have a connection to New York at least.
Well, I think that, many of the Times columnists do not live in New York, so that's not required. I do believe that the news media business is anchored in New York in a lot of ways, in television and in print, and a lot of the book publishing industry is in New York. So that is very true. But there is a bigger question to me. Are we going to do things for the rest of it? Or are you going to be altruistic and be in space with other Black people to lift the whole? I remember when I was about to go to college and I had a full scholarship from LSU, called me down to Grambling. I was only 20 minutes away, but they called me to come into the office. White man. And he says, I also had a scholarship in Louisiana Tech. He says, LSU doesn't need you. Louisiana Tech doesn't need you. Grambling needs you. For real, what he was saying, as I understood it, was they don't need to inflate their numbers with your account. Where you are needed is among the rest of your peers, that you are going to give to them, but you're going to receive from them by being in community. That it is an altruistic choice. It is not the school with the most advantages for you. He's not making that argument. He was making an argument of sacrifice. You need to come here because we need your intellectual power in this community. I took him up on it.
In Grambling.
Yes,
At Grambling.
And it was exactly what he said. I gave, but I received because I was in community with my people, and they gave. I learned culturally things that I would never have learned about Blackness, and it wasn't in a Black studies class. Ironically, very few HBCUs have Black studies majors or even tracks because you're living the experience.
You know, you're right about that. There was a different sort of reasoning when I went to college. It's that my sisters, and my sister, one went to Grambling, one went to Southern, rivals, you know. My mom went to Southern, my uncle went to Grambling, so there was always this rivalry. But it's like, we wanted you, my dad went to Southern, but then got his law degree, I believe, this is way back in the day, from LSU. We want you to go to an integrated place.
Yes, I understand that.
But you know, I kind of regret that sometimes because I missed out on the experience that you had.
But there are pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
Right. There's the idea. For me, what was really powerful was gaining the confidence of never questioning myself in the space. I grew up in a majority Black town, went to an all Black high school, all Black HBCU, all Black college. Every room I walked into, the smartest person in the room was Black.
Yeah.
I never questioned for a minute that every room that I walked into, the smartest person could not be Black, and that could not be me.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah.
During the course of my journalistic career and interviewing a million different people, met really brilliant Black people, went to amazing schools, advanced degrees, and they were covered in racial battle scars, constantly questioning, constantly unsure
Whether they were good enough or
good enough.
Black people.
It was the question, the constant trying to perform to justify their
existence.
their seat at the table. And I was like, what are you doing? I didn't understand, like, what is this? Because you're brilliant.
Yeah. I never had that. So I understand what you said. I was always in rooms where Black people were brilliant and the smartest people in the room. I knew that by the time I got to LSU, I knew that because I went to an all Black elementary school and all Black junior high. My high school wasn't all Black. I was tired of Catholic school, so I went to a public school. But, you know, I had all the public school Black folks. It was great. It was a great experience. But by the time I got to college, I had been around all Black people. I lived in an all Black neighborhood, which was sort of a W.B. Du Bois talented 10th neighborhood. Yeah. I mean, it was literally a Leave It to Beaver neighborhood with a 2-car garage and the sprinklers and whatever.
I can see you
all
do it being a Leave It to Beaver.
It was all Black folks. It was, you know, people who were engineers or they were professors at Southern University or that, you know, that kind of thing. And so I was used to being around brilliant Black people. I was surprised that the white people were not used to my brilliance and seeing that. And so for them, I was just like, yes, here I am in my beauty, my Blackness, and my smartness. And they were always like, oh my God, you're really smart for a Black guy. You know what I mean?
How did you receive that?
I knew then. I was just like, yeah, I'm really smart. I said, how about I'm just smarter than you, was my thing. Right. And sometimes I just shut up because I knew that they were ignorant, and I just showed them by example about how smart.
See, I don't think I've ever had anyone say to me that I'm.
You've never had someone say you're really good looking for a Black man. You're really handsome for a Black man.
I don't. Because I think I would have known that I would have snapped in a crazy way. So I know that I would have remembered it. I don't think that I remember it happening.
Yeah. So that happened to me in college. And by the time I got to the workplace, in the workforce, and it happened to me, I wasn't was not surprising to me that that kind of thing would happen. And so
No,
it prepared me for, I believe, the larger workforce.
Listen, I've heard it insinuated in a way,
Yeah.
by a TV producer. He was like, oh, basically saying that I was part of the handsome black person quotient of the show. And I was like, what? Or when I was younger and would go out, and I was going out with a friend who also worked at the Times, and we'd go out to club, and the promoter would say, oh yes, you're part of my beautiful black people group. And I was like, what? So
A white promoter? A black
he was Russian. He was Russian.
Really? And?
Yes. And so I was like, what? Like, it's shocking to hear that you are playing a role in some curation that someone's doing. That's shocking.
But it's a weird sort of diluted form of I don't want to call it slavery, but you know what I mean? Like, you are performing and I have hired you to do a certain sort of thing. And so it's like Dance Monkey. Right. You know what I say?
It's that, but it is also, it also allows for people to continue their racism and stereotype. That there are people who can graduate. I can make exceptions, because the only way that white supremacy works is that it has to have exceptions, because that you have to be able to explain away someone who's brilliant. Yeah. You have to be able to explain away someone who exceeds your idea of what beauty is. You have to be able to explain that away. So they make exceptions so that they can maintain the rule.
Yeah.
And so when you realize that you are the exception that's being used to maintain the rule, the only way that you can be part of the handsome or beautiful black people group that they allow in is that they are keeping the rest of us out.
Right. And the only reason you're there is that you're exceptional. So you get to be there.
It is implicit to the moment he said that, I will never be back here again.
Yeah.
Because what you are doing is using me to make sure that no one feels like you're being discriminatory. But in fact, you are. You're using me as the rule, as the exception to the rule, which is to keep all of the rest of the people like me out.
Yeah. And thus, this moment that we're in, I think we're explaining that everything that they're trying to do to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, the importance of Black history, the contributions of Black people. And when you look at what they're doing and how they're handling it now, it really is, they're doing the exact opposite of what they think they're doing. They're proving that there is no white supremacy, that they're not superior, that they are, in many ways, a lot less talented and a lot less smarter than many people of color in this country.
Look, it proves the Toni Morrison quote, which she says when she was young, and that white people would treat her different and weird, and her father wasn't having any of it. And she says, I always knew I had the moral upper hand. Mm-hmm. I always knew that you were deficient because you were doing this thing.
Yeah.
And I believe that there is nothing more clear in this moment that has been clarifying for me in this moment than to know that I now know beyond the shadow of a doubt that I have the moral upper hand.
Yeah.
You may have the power in Washington or whatever. You may have the power to strip universities, but you are digging yourself so deep into a hole of immorality that you will never emerge from it for me.
Yeah. But you're also digging yourself deep in, to prove the non-existence of white supremacy or white superiority. Just by your actions, just by your incompetence, that you're proving it.
Because it doesn't work.
Because it doesn't work.
Because it doesn't work. There's no way to make it work. It is anti-intellectual from the beginning. So the fact that you would have idiots working in this anti-intellectual environment makes total sense, because it never made sense. It is not an intellectual thing.
So then what is the big push to now? Because honestly, everything now is, let's remove Blackness altogether from history, from the present, from the future. If you look at the folks who are in charge, mainly incompetent white men who are in charge of the country right now. And that's just, I'm just being honest. It's not racist. It's an honest, I believe, objective viewpoint of what's happening, examination of what's happening.
But part of it is not about efficacy. They don't, it may not all of it will work. They don't care.
Then what is it
I
then?
mean, they're putting stakes in the ground. They're putting stakes in the ground
For what?
to signify that this is what we believe, and we will not only now we will not back away from it, we will not code it. We won't code it. Maybe a court will knock this down or that down, but we have put the stake in the ground with the president of the United States name and signature on it that this is what we believe. And when polls show that 90% of Republicans say they are happy with the performance of that president, they are putting stakes in the ground.
Does it bother you that they don't care? They don't care. It's in your face.
It is
In a way, I'm happy that it's in your face.
revelatory.
Yeah.
What it has done for a lot of people. I had a young woman talk to me today at the book signing about how ashamed she was for allowing herself to believe that they had changed and they were different.
That they had changed and they were different? Yeah.
And I think a lot of Black people are hurt in that way because there was a moment that people didn't think that was post-racial, but they dared to dream that progress was continuous, that it would always, no matter how slowly it happened, we would put one brick on top of the next one. This is forcing us to understand there's not one brick on top there. They're knocking the wall down.
But it's
And it is the Baldwin thing. When he says in one of his essays, Black people don't want to be betrayed by too much helping.
Yeah.
I never quite got that until this moment where I feel convicted by that I am betrayed in my own self because I may have hoped more than I should.
Okay, but isn't it weird? I think you were saying the same thing. Doesn't it feel a bit liberating? It feels liberating for me that the truth has come out. Not necessarily, I don't believe it's just sort of lifting the veil. I believe the mask is off. And I think the mask is off for a certain degree. I believe full transparency right now. And it gives me the freedom, actually, to lean into my Blackness as hard and as much as I want to lean into it. I don't have to sort of go, well, white people. I just say it out loud. White people are doing this. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I feel this freedom now to just as much as they have taken the mask off, so have I taken the mask off with politeness, right? Which, I don't want to offend people. I don't care if I offend you anymore because what you're doing is so offensive that it doesn't matter anymore for me.
I don't know if liberation is the way I would describe it for me, because I see people willing to destroy it all rather than to share it. And that is so kind of fatalistic. Like, you are willing to burn it all down.
Yeah.
And I think I look at that and I think, how will we ever coexist and come back from that? You have to at some point just assume that we're going to have some collective amnesia or collective just if you assume that you will get past it.
But that's showing me you were more hopeful than you let on, because I think that you can. I think go ahead. Tear it down and rebuild it, because we need that. We need to rebuild it from an honest place, and maybe that's where we are right now. Did I have hope? Yes, but maybe you were more hopeful than
I think it's idealistic to say, burn it all down and rebuild it. Building is often centuries-long work, super hard work, and unsure. Like, there were so many moments in American history where it could have just gone really badly.
and just by in most countries' histories, right? There are a million forks in the road, and I can say in kind of a clinical sense, yes, tear it all down and start over, but I know those forks reappear, and it could all go wrong still in the rebuilding. Rebuilding, tearing something down also involves chaos.
But don't you want to tear down a house that's not built on a good foundation? You have to start. You've got to say.
I think in theory, I think in the real world where there's a million moving pieces, including the internal population and their politics, and other nation states and their politics, and how that has all been globalized with social media and the internet and AI, the dangers involved in a start from scratch approach to the largest, the wealthiest country in the world, the dangers in that are also very evident to me. And whenever there's danger, what history tells me is that Black people get the worst of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I would love, in theory, if I could map it all out on, in my computer and rewrite the history to be right. Yes, I would do that. But because I know we don't have the reins of power, we don't have the bulk of the wealth. In that chaos, if something goes wrong, we get the worst.
But I don't believe that we're starting over. The difference is that we're starting over with the knowledge of who we really are and what this country really is.
Who's the we?
So if all of us.
We're not all of us, because half the country doesn't believe the truth right now.
Well, but it would put us, I think it puts us at least an advantage with this rebuilding that we didn't have from the beginning, of knowing exactly, and maybe less, I believe, less hope.
Are you assuming that the rebuilding happens without these people here? The people who are voting for this, and 90% of them are supporting?
Well, of course.
If they're here, how does that not create chaos? I mean, it's the same chaos you have now, but you just have a few structures still in place. Take away all the structures, right?
But I think we start at a stronger place. We start at a place that we have a more economic power than we had before. African Americans, Black people.
How would you start over with more economic power?
What do you mean, how we start?
How would you start over with more economic power? How do you claw it out of the hands of the people who have it now?
Well, we have to claw it out of the hands of the people who have it now, even with where we are, and it doesn't appear to be working.
Okay, but let's say you had the magic wand and you start over. How does it transfer? How does the wealth transfer?
Well, reparations, which AI, I'm all for, but AI, we have artificial intelligence now, which we can do it, as I write, just as we do in a lawsuit,
okay,
in a legal suit. You figure out where everything should go, and then we work for it.
First of all, reparations has never been a math problem. Like the whole creation that is so difficult to do.
You think it's an intellectual problem?
Seriously, it's never been a problem. We can figure out anything. We went through COVID. We figured out how to get trillions of dollars out the door to everybody who needed it overnight.
I agree with you, but overnight. The math problem is who should it go to? Where should it go to? Which people?
What is that?
How do we understand?
Listen, 23andMe is up for sale. Like right now. This is not an issue. It's not an issue.
Do you think AI can figure that out? I think that is the math problem that I'm talking about.
I think people are saying,
where does it go? I don't
stop saying we don't know who gets the money. We have genealogists. You have proof. Stop saying we want to put it into a fund for housing and a fund for education. Reparation has always been cash. Always been cash. People always got checks. Nobody got a college fund. Nobody started talking about college funds until they started talking about us. I would put my own kid in college. Thank you.
You want the cash.
Give me the shot.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm in a position where I was like, I need the money.
But how is that not a math problem then? Because you want to check.
People have. That's what reparation has always been.
I agree.
Literally,
that's what I mean.
Around the world. Listen, when the English basically literally gave reparations to the enslavers because they said you can't get rid of slavery because it's my property.
Germany.
And they changed it.
Yeah.
So it's always been money.
Yeah.
Trump was in an interview, I think it was on Newsmax, and he was entertaining the idea of reparations for the J6 riders.
Yeah. Reparations for white people. And reparations for farmers actually in South Africa to come to this country.
I just, when people start with the whole, like, how do you do it? It's so complicated. No. It's a check. Here's the birth certificate. Where's my check? Like that. That's what it is.
I think we're saying the same thing. I look at it as a math problem, but it's not.
How's it?
I'm not saying it's a math.
How's complicated as math?
How do you figure out who to give it to?
There are books written, literally calculated what the scale of.
All right, but it sounds like you're proving my point that we can do it, and at least we have knowledge to do it now.
We can do it.
Okay, so then we have that to start with the foundation that we didn't have before. Do you understand what?
Okay, so, but it's a problem. Let's say if you tear everything down, there's no treasury. It's just chaos. If everything crumbles. In theory, it makes sense. In practice, it makes chaos.
But Charles, we're not going back to 1619. We're not going back to we're starting from now with the knowledge that we have. When I say burn it all, not burn it down, but start with a foundation that we have now.
I want to dream through your eyes because I can't quite see it because I see chaos. I agree with the idea that the system is corrupt and arrayed against Black people and a lot of other minorities who are fragile and vulnerable. And it's really hard to see how to make it right.
I'm just concerned that this sort of piecemeal approach, especially in the time that we are in now, that it is not working. And so I believe that this is a big, I like to look at it as an opportunity. I know it's awful what's happening, but I think it's an opportunity for us to start from here.
Yes.
In the beginning, with a new boldness and clearer eyes than when we came to this country.
Okay. And listen. If I could wave the wand, I would do this thing. I just don't know how you get there from here.
That's that. Okay. But I think we're going to figure out how to get there from here. I believe this is where we are in this.
That's a good question I want to ask you though. Like, how do you think we return from the edge of the cliff where we are now?
Where we are now?
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to return from the edge of the cliff. I think we're going to go over.
Really?
Yes.
And what does that look like?
I don't know, but that's sort of what I'm saying. I don't know. We have to figure it out with the knowledge that we have now, because we know how they are and what the lengths that they will go to preserve whiteness and to preserve their place in society. That's really what it's about. Fear. It's about losing their place in society, losing the preeminent voices that they have. So I think we're going over a cliff if we're not over that cliff now. When you have people getting rid of, the accomplishments of Black people in history and taking them out of the history books, taking us out of the history books, and getting rid of, diversity, equity, inclusion, I think we're done.
So, but
there's no legislative branch anymore. The legislative branch is part of the executive branch now. There's really no judicial branch.
Right.
That's part of the executive branch now. So the Republicans, or right now the MAGA folks who are mainly white, they are in control of everything now, and they're not going back. And so I think we have to start over with a clearer eye and a clearer vision about how we move forward, because this sort of piecemeal effort and hoping that someone is going to come around, they're never going to come around. I did a talk with a congresswoman who I love, and I said, what do we do? People were asking, it was a virtual town hall, what do we do? What do we do? And she said, we just need 3 or 4 Republicans to come over. And I said, that's never going to happen. And I think it's the same way with the country. It's never going to happen. You're never going to get them to understand the moment that we're in, or even just accept us for who we are.
Okay. So first I want to say that I do respect the people who do the work of coalition building and bridge building or whatever. But the big but in that sense, but that is not me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the time. I have zero patience for trying to convince someone
to come out of a cave.
I agree.
I'm
with you.
It really, it disturbs something spiritually in me that I should have to spend my time and my energy
Convincing other people.
But time, energy, love, creativity are limited commodities in a life.
Mm-hmm.
Every minute that I spend on trying to correct the flaw in someone else is time I spend away from loving my family, from being in community,
And yourself.
doing my work, from being creative. And I look at all of our monumental Black intellectuals like a Frederick Douglass, like a Ida B. Wells, the list goes on. And I think, what could they have invented if they were not consumed by this poison that you had put into the society?
Amen. Yes. And I feel that way now because there are people who are coalition building now.
Yes.
And it's hard for me to find time in my day from dealing with my sister who is sick, trying to, create content and run a business, spending time with my husband, right? Spending time with my friends and the people I love, to be all consumed by the toxicity that is happening on the other side and the energy that it takes to build a coalition to try to convince other people to come along.
And also it centers,
It's almost unbearable.
it intellectually centers them instead of us. And so the exercise that I like to always do in my mind is to make sure that I am starting from the narrative of us, that it is not defining Blackness as compared to whiteness or oppressed by whiteness or in competition with anyone, but rather that these are humans who have the same human characteristics as any other. They laugh when they are happy, and they cry when they are sad, and they invent, and there's crime, but there's heroes. They have all of the capacity. And when we change the artistic lens so that we are not measuring this humanity by any other humanity or this by anything else, I'm able to then free us off. And by freeing us, I free me to just be a human in the world who is trying to be all the things that humans want to be. That is a revolutionary, in some ways, radical shift that I wish more people would do, because that is where the freedom is.
Yeah.
I think it is a shackle, sometimes necessary, that we have fighters in our space who have to go out and fight against white supremacy, because it has to.
You said it was a shackle?
It's a shackle because you are tying yourself to the bayonet, right?
Yeah.
That is your role now in the world, is that you are the soldier rather than you are the artist. And I want there to be space that the artist has as much power and as much force as anyone, because there is so much power and force in art.
You said in art.
In art.
I am living that now. I just wrote a piece on Substack. I don't know if you got a chance to read it, where I talked about the folks who are going to save us in this moment, if it's, to be saved, are artists, writers, people who are, philanthropists. And I mentioned you, I mentioned Darren Walker, I mentioned Dr. Francis Collins, I mentioned Dr. Fauci, and those people who are unafraid and unapologetic to be any of those things, and also to be Black. What you're saying right now, I am living that, right? Because you know what's happening in journalism. I believe you're living it away. You know what's happening in journalism and media. It's really tough. So there are people who are building coalitions to try to protect us because they're trying to get rid of us. But it's tough. And you know, I am building a business. I'm an entrepreneur now, right? I'm not just a journalist.
Yes.
And so, you know, I'm starting to that's another brick that I'm building.
Yeah.
I believe when we were talking about starting over and whatever, I believe that building something from scratch, not necessarily from scratch, I'm not saying from the very beginning, the house is stronger, the building is stronger when you're building, because one side is building, that's us. The other side is preserving. It takes a lot more energy, as a matter of fact, I believe, to preserve than to build.
And the beauty of what you're doing, Don, is like I live by this motto, which is when things fall apart, build something. Like it is because it is such an opposite impulse. It balances destruction. It balances all that negativity that comes with people trying to destroy, because you are in the mode of creation. And that gives us all the juice.
And inspiration.
All the inspiration and the joy of creation. Creation is an amazing, magical thing. And so the fact that you're in that now changes all narratives.
Yeah. But I don't want to be building by building off something that is negatively inspired, because I'm building because I'm fighting this. I'm building because I'm in a moment of inspiration. I'm being creative. I know that is there, but that is not the source of.
But I want you to accept that the greatest art is always produced in the greatest pressure.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So our greatest artists, they were living in rough areas. It was crime. New York in the 80s produced some amazing artists.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So there a lot, and when you look around the world at where art really starts and the creative juices are going, it is under pressure.
Pressure, friction.
It's under pressure.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's a negative impulse. It is that the human spirit needs that pressure cooker sometimes as the ignition to create something amazing, because that is our reaction.
Yeah. But what I mean by that is not out of anger.
Yeah.
I want to create out of inspiration. That thing,
Yes.
right, that could have taken me down is an inspiration, is inspiring, rather than something that will crush me, or I have this negative anger that I am,
Anger serves no one.
No one.
Anger serves no one.
No.
And I understand people's impulse to want to be mad about something, particularly if you've been wronged or whatever. But I do believe that there is so much power in reclaiming your own peace and saying, it is the moral high ground thing, right?
Yeah.
If I know that I have the moral high ground in the situation, there is so much solace in that it is almost impossible, and also a self-flagellation.
Autonomy.
To allow myself to be angry.
Autonomy is an amazing thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Autonomy and I feel fully emancipated.
Emancipated. Also, and I want to speak for you, but I also believe that you're like feeling your power, like, because it is not tied to something else, and it's just you.
But it's a little. It's rejiggering it.
It should be unnerving.
Yeah.
It should be frightening.
Yeah.
It should be all those things. But that is what the adventure is.
Yeah.
If you're not a little bit afraid, you're not doing it.
Yeah. A little off kilter.
A little bit off. Wake up thinking it might crash today.
Yeah.
Like all of that, that's where the magic happens.
I woke up this morning feeling that, and you know what I did? I wrote something. I used that as inspiration to write about the experience that I had this weekend.
Yes.
Right? Being with all those people, and many of those people are just beautiful, smart Black people, really people of all different ethnicities.
Yes.
But to be with you,
right,
and friends and people who I admire was very empowering, so to speak. And so from that negative, or I don't know if it's a negative space, but from that, it's all kind of dark. It's a little dark.
Yes.
From that space, I say, how do I create light in this space? And the light came from really just sharing, being honest about it, and then putting it out there rather than keeping it inside because then it becomes darker, right? I let the light in.
And that's the magic.
Yeah.
Have you encountered this sentiment in Black people that I've experienced, which they're just like, I'm not doing anything. You broke it, you fix it. I'm not touching it. I'm done. Like, have you experienced that?
I woke up in the middle of the night and I read something someone said, and it was also on social media as well. I read something about Black people sitting out, especially about Black women. I forget exactly what I read. And then, I flipped through. It's like, oh, let me see what's on social media. And it was a Black guy saying, someone was saying, let's go, let's fight. We're having this march for freedom or a march for whatever on this day. And then this voice came to him and said, sit down. You don't need to do that. And then all of the comments were like, I'm going to be minding my own Black business on this or whatever. I'm not getting out. I'm not fighting. I'm not joining any march, any protest, nothing. I'm conflicted about it.
What? Tell me.
Because I understand the sentiment, especially more so coming from Black women, because Black women have always fought for us. They've kept us alive as a people, and especially Black men. We have been on the shoulders of Black women. But I don't understand it. I think the men can join in a bit more. But I also believe that we have to fight. You have to be in the fight in order to win, right? And so I don't like it when people who sit out reap the benefits, but that always happens. But I am conflicted about it. But I don't believe that the only way to fight or push back is through protest, public protest.
Right. I think I share that conflicted feeling. But also I'm not sending anybody out to the street. I'm not, encouraging anybody to go in a physical protest.
One must be willing to sacrifice something.
I don't think that, maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but I don't believe that people are saying that they don't recognize that fighting is the only way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what I am sensing in those comments is the massive disappointment.
Yeah.
The massive disappointment in the rest of the population that they could not abide that Black woman. And they were willing to risk it all.
Yeah.
Not to have her. And I think, because we had only been to the finish line twice in the first three times. And the first two times we went over the finish line. So Barack Obama got to the finish line and he won twice. So we had never gotten to the finish line, had the presidential candidate, and the country rebuked it. And not only did they rebuke it, they rebuked it for the worst possible choice. I think that hurt in a way that we are still trying to escalate and people are still trying to articulate. But it is a deep, deep wound, and a lot of people are not even dealing with process. They try to into diversion, like we're line dancing.
Yeah.
So that's what said.
Yeah. I'm gonna have some shrimp and grits. But it goes back to what you were saying about what James Baldwin said. We don't want to be too hopeful, and I see people saying it as well. Is why do I have to get out there and march? You should have voted. You should have voted a different way, and you fucked around and found out. And so, live with it.
And they're often saying, "I will likely get there one day.
Right,
just not there. Right.
I'm just not there. I'm tired.
I'm tired right now.
Or I'm done for the moment.
Yes.
I think it's okay to be done for the moment, but I don't think that forever you cannot just sit back.
There's going to come a time,
right,
when the full weight of what is being done now will be felt in people's homes. Everybody, not just that. It's already being felt in some people's homes, right? There's passport issues that people are having, who identities.
Yeah, but wait till the MAGA folks start losing their veterans, their services,
I'm not worried about them, and all that's going to happen. In our communities, it's going to come home and be felt very personally. And there's a moment where, as much as we want to rest, or as much as we want to line dance, or as much as we want diversion,
We won't have that luxury.
we will not have the option to sit.
Not just luxury, we won't have the option.
We won't have the option.
That's different. Having the luxury and then having the option. So we're gonna be forced, compelled to do it.
When you look at everything that's happened, the Black people, particularly Black women, over-indexed tremendously at our government. There's already now a class action lawsuit that said they were letting go more Black people and keeping more of the white people. There's already a lawsuit bill on this. Black women are now the most highly educated segment of the population, but along with that, they're also carrying the most student loan debt.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of the Department of Education, you shift around how student loans are operated, how they're managed. You shift around repayment systems that did weigh your income so that you would go broke trying to pay back these student loans. All of those things, all those hens are going to come home to roost. There will come a time when we won't have the option of saying, you did it, you broke it, you fix it. It will be landing on us. And I don't know what that'll look like, but I believe that that will produce some sort of action from our community.
Do you worry about, I do. I worry about it. I don't know how you feel. Do you worry about the silencing or the minimizing of not just liberal or centrist voices, but Black voices in media who are, and I don't mean, there doesn't mean that there aren't Black people there, but like there are people who are advocating for Black issues openly and unapologetically. Does that concern you?
Well, I think I want to be able to have a little bit of hindsight, a little distance from it so that I can analyze it more clearly. But on its face, there are voices that came to much more prominence during BLM and are tied to that. Like they, in the consciousness, they are tied to a face forward, unapologetic Blackness that is liberation focused. It doesn't quibble. It doesn't try to hide itself in disguise. I do worry that those kinds of voices, we have fewer of them, and that the voices that we do have take a more nuanced approach to discussing what the bigger problems are in the society and don't always center or put forth race in that discussion. And I don't know if I have enough data yet to be able to make such a sweeping statement, but that is my worry and that is what I watch.
Mm-hmm. I think the more nuanced that is, I appreciate that. I don't know if that's really happening. I think this is a moment of fear for a lot of people. Obviously, people are sort of recalculating what they do. And I think that you always have to read the room to figure out, like, okay, in this moment, how far should I go? What should I do in order to stay here, to be able to do that? But I also believe in moments like this, it's important to stand strong. And I believe that you can stand strong and still be more forward and just figure out, and just maybe there's a different place or a different spot for you. Maybe it's like more independent, and you don't have all of that, as we mentioned, corporation behind you.
And I think that the operative word there is corporation, because we like to think of journalism, because it is the only business in the Constitution itself, as a public good.
Right. But it's a business.
But it's a corporate enterprise. Like it is. So it is this public good is always in competition or being kind of weighed against how much money you can make and what are the returns for investors, and are the people in charge happy with the profits that you make.
And, you can see that in all sorts of like light kind of coverage in particular. All the light coverage was created in newspapers because you could sell ads against it.
Right. All of the
light cover. You would do.
What do you mean by that?
Gardening. You could sell ads against that. You
I
could
got you saying.
your home, section. You could sell ads in a home section because there were people who made home goods.
Right.
So that has always been the case. And even in the political sphere, people may write or discuss on TV how they want campaign finance reform, but media benefits from the fact that people are paying billions of dollars in one cycle on the campaign. So you see these massive responses to campaign. So many reporters on the street, big sets for for debates, because the amount of money circulating in the campaign that can go to media is incredible, and that influences a lot of it.
But the people who are financing all of that own the media companies that's doing it.
More and more, that's the
more and more.
Yes.
Pretty much all of it is. I mean, look at the. Let's just do. Let's do broadcast,
Okay.
and then you're probably more familiar with print. I mean, look, even in print, if you look at Bezos,
Yes.
yeah,
But that's just like a that's a penny in the couch in his wealth. Like, it's literally.
But that's what I'm saying. And those people are at the inauguration, right? Which is a little bit frightening. But let's just do the broadcast, folks. If you look at CBS, Paramount, right, which is entertainment. If you look at CNN, Warner Brothers, entertainment. NBC, Comcast, which is telecommunications, right, and entertainment. ABC, Disney.
Yes.
Those folks don't want their business in Washington and their mergers and acquisitions and all that messed up. So that means that's part of journalism and probably the smallest part of their profits, and increasingly bigger, maybe increasingly smaller now, but it was a bigger part of their profits. And so they don't want some journalist like, just for example, or me or Bob or whatever, messing that up with with the shareholders or the corporation owner saying, what is that young lady down there doing? Get rid of her.
It is a very.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think that the public always appreciates that all that is happening, or understands that all of that is happening, and that the person they see and trust on TV has a boss on top of a boss
On top of the boss.
and those people are not necessarily interested in your journalistic ethics. They're interested in bottom lines. That's a real.
They're interested in bottom lines and narratives,
Yes.
right? And if it fits their political narrative, right? And so, and also if it fits the person who's in charge of the country, or meaning the president's narrative. And so all of that donations to the president, to their inaugural funds, or to whatever it is, there's a reason for that.
But it's more pronounced with this president.
That's what I mean. I'm speaking of this presidency right now, and this presidency right now has more power over the media, I believe, in history, because this president, can communicate with these owners in a way that other presidents were not even interested in doing.
But and also the impact of social media that this president now has.
So that's
owning a social media company, having Elon as the person in charge of Doge, or having Mark look like he's being sympathetic, and like it's very. I don't think we will know for a while how destructive this has actually been.
That's my point. And look, these people are in control of algorithms. Everything now is about an algorithm, but someone is programming that algorithm for what you see and what you think is important, and what is high on the algorithm, what's low, and that they can, if they want to, they can just squash what you're saying.
Have you listened to your analysts? I do this all the time. like they won't let you see certain things.
You mean analytics? You said.
Yeah, analytics of my own social media.
Yeah.
And political things, they do not like them.
They don't like them. But the weird thing, have you watched like they call it your For You page or the home page or whatever?
Yes.
Mine changed overnight. And
Like way.
after the inauguration, I was like, what is all of this stuff on my, someone had to be programming on these different sites what was pushed forward and what, because I'm not that interested in this presidency and what they're doing at an inaugural ball or whatever. And I was like, why is this even here? And it changed overnight. And a lot of people I spoke to said mine changed overnight as well. My algorithm changed overnight. I had to reprogram it or just like say, I'm not interested in this or delete it because I was getting pushed these things that I didn't want. And a lot of people say, not a lot of people say, a lot of people don't follow certain media owners on their own platform, yet they are pushed and programmed their content.
Are you familiar with the dead internet theory, which is
No.
It's kind of loosely. I don't want to misstate it, but it's that the internet becomes so polluted, so junky that people give up on it. Like it's so much disinformation, so much manipulation that people just give up on it, and it dies in a way.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I don't know who.
He believes that he thinks that AI is going to kill the internet because he believes that it'll somehow. I think I'm just sort of. Analyzing what he said, what I believe he said to me is that he thinks that it will bring facts in reality back in. That's interesting that AI will do that back into fashion, and that will sort of kill the internet or kill social media. I forget exactly.
That's hopeful.
One would hope. How do you feel in this moment, honestly? How do you feel as a Black man in this moment? With what's happening now?
It's just I was just on a panel. I was talking about this, like the idea that I had believed that we were better, not like perfect or that discrimination didn't exist, but had believed generally in, like the stock market, it goes up, it goes down, but if you look over a long period of time, it goes up. The general track is up. That was part of the history of race and struggle in the country, that there's some horrible regressions and horrible things, but generally the track was towards an expansion of liberties and freedoms. And a lot of that constructs came crashes to the ground, Nicholas, because I see people cheering destruction.
Yeah.
This is pitchfork behavior. And I don't know if I can recover from that. Like the country may recover from it. I don't know that I will ever be the same person that I was before they did this.
Yeah. You just articulated sort of what I meant to articulate earlier in the conversation. I've never been under the illusion that we were in any other place. I just thought that we, where certain people were good at hiding it. I have been surprised by the speed with which they have shown themselves. I thought it would be a little bit more gradual, not quite so obvious. But that's what I said. I believe that we are over the cliff now,
and I will never forget the cheering. I will never forget or forgive the cheering.
The cheering,
yeah. The fact that the polls still show that you have, stratospheric approval among Republicans. I will never forget that, because you see the pain that this has caused. You see people getting picked up off the street. You see. International health being undermined by the elimination of USAID, and millions, primarily in Black and brown countries, are going to die.
Yeah,
this is not hyperbole. This is going to happen. The only reason that we had some handle on HIV in developing countries was the U.S. was helping with Medicaid.
It's because of organizations like USAID.
And
people are going to die.
Yeah.
And the fact that people are cheering that as if that's a good thing, I'm not going to be able to get over it. I hope my children can get over it. I think I'm going to have to end up going out with a grudge. That's just the way I see it.
Do you believe that those people voted selfishly, or that they were just voting for what they thought was their own interest?
Not selfishly, callously.
Callously. Mm-hmm.
You did not care about the suffering of other human beings. And you are showing that over and over again. And in fact, you want it to happen. You want those families to be separated. You want people to be thrown on planes without due process and shipped to countries that they may not even know.
The cruelty is the point.
The cruelty is the point. That you have revealed yourself. And I don't know how to put that toothpaste back in the tube.
I said that, Charles. I said that from the beginning. How do you do that? You cannot go, okay, well, let's, we're not going to go back to 2024. Do you know what I'm saying? We're not going back to 2020. We're not going back to 2012, 13, 14, 15, Barack Obama. We're not going back to
everybody
2008. We're not going back to that.
hope and changing and
Yeah, hope and change. And then, okay, so that's what I meant about we have to start over in some way. And maybe this is the impetus to do it, the time to do it. I just don't, because I don't know how we continue on hoping that we're going to win over some people.
it may not be theoretical. I mean, they are literally breaking the federal government.
Yes.
So it may not be completely theoretical.
Yeah.
Even if you could predict the future and a Democrat wins in 3 years or 4 years, a single agency of trying to hire back 20,000 people, like the numbers of thousands of people who have been let go is just astronomical. Just the physical activity of getting the resumes, interviewing 4 or 5 people for each one of the 20,000 slots in a single agency.
Yeah.
This is decades work, and you've already poisoned the tap because who's going to trust the job?
But you're assuming with that, that we're going to have another election.
No, I'm just saying,
There's going to be if you were to do it.
I'm just saying if that even happens, your view of where we're going may not be so far off, because it may not be that we decide to break it and start from scratch. He's breaking it.
Yes.
And we may be starting from something.
Yes.
I don't know if we're starting from scratch, but it's being broken right before our eyes, and this is only 3 months of it.
Well, I hear people saying, the midterm is coming, and then whatever. I don't know if we're going to have another election, or I don't think he's going to leave. I don't think he's going to leave office.
Really?
No, I don't think he's going to leave office. I don't think we're going to have another election. He's putting people into place to make sure that doesn't happen. He's already hinting, and people, his surrogates, the Steve Bannons of the world,
Bannon did say that.
saying that he's going to have a third term.
I heard Bannon say that.
And whatever that is, even if it's a J.D. Vance as a president and Donald Trump as a vice president, you will know who the real president is, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of believe, and for a long, long time, it's over. I don't think we're going to have a Democrat. It would be great if we had a Democratic president, a president who was a Democrat, or someone who believed in democracy.
So, okay,
but I don't think that's going to happen for a long time.
Let's follow that thread.
Okay.
You believe it's over. You believe not going to have another fair election. Don't believe Trump's going to leave office. How are you positioning yourself, just personally, to navigate the near and far future?
I don't really have a solid answer for that, except for, to be in my own ownness.
Okay.
My own ownness. I don't really have an answer for that. I've thought about that a lot. And how do you just sort of put one foot in front of the other, but it certainly is concerning to me. I hope that I'm wrong.
Okay.
I hope that I'm wrong. But when you look at all of the people he's putting in place, including the Supreme Court, and all the judges he's putting in place.
Please, everybody, hold on, because I just can't. Like, he's already has 3 of the 6. The idea that 4, possibly 5 of the justices could be appointed by this one person who I think does not have the country's best interest at heart is just too much for me to even consider.
But the odds are the
odds are, yes, the odds are that at least one vacancy will happen.
Clarence Thomas or
Well, if it was Clarence, it'd be fine because he would replace someone else in the same brand as him. But what I'm worried about is a Sotomayor or someone on the lip. The group is already small, so I'm worried about one of them. Yeah, big hitting spot.
So then you have to figure out new ways of fighting back, which is kind of
Everybody does. I think that's the dilemma. You can't tell people that voting is your way to fight back because you vote once every 2 years for Congress, and then once every 4 years for president.
Yeah,
we don't have 4 years. So now what are you gonna say? 2 years for the like that's still too long,
right?
So you can't say to people, voting is one of the arrows in your quiver. You have to do something in the meantime to make sure to feel empowered.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think the feeling of powerlessness is also part of the game plan. It is by design, and it is crippling.
Yeah, but I believe that the way whatever is going to happen, whether it's fighting back or whatever, I believe it has not been invented yet. Right. And so that's why I think people like
mass protest, you don't think is it?
I don't know if it's it. I think there is a place for mass protest because it shows cohesion,
right.
And it may instill some fear in the other side that, oh my gosh, these people are fed up and maybe they'll do something. Who knows, right? Maybe there's some fear there. But I think it will be invented by some artist, some writer, will be inspired by some James Baldwin type figure.
Yes.
Or maybe some Malcolm X type figure that has not really emerged. And I think that is probably where it is going to happen.
Do you think we can get through this peacefully?
No.
Wow.
I don't think that. I mean, where is the inspiration? Where does the inspiration or desire come from for change through peace in this situation? Because they don't care. I think it will come through fear.
Fear can still be peaceful.
Well, not the kind of fear not the kind of fear that I believe is going to move these folks because they don't really care. They don't really care. So I don't look. I know I sound pessimistic. I don't want to sound pessimistic.
You have switched in the middle of this conversation from being very optimistic to being.
You think?
I think you started like on a more optimist note. You were like happy that the veils had come off and you could start over, and you were very like it felt to me.
No, but it's all from the same thing, that because we are going over a cliff, and that if I'm going to look at it in some way as in an optimistic way, is that through the going over the cliff and starting all over again, perhaps there will be something there. But that means
you run over the cliff is the rainbow.
Look at the cliff, and at the bottom there's a rainbow that's gonna stop. That's gonna hold me from hitting, from ending it all. But I don't think that I'm optimistic about it. I think that is my optimism in that.
Okay.
And I don't know if people will find that optimistic or pessimistic. But that's how I feel.
Well, do you personally engage in diversion? Like, are you consciously saying, I'm just not going to think about it, and I'm going to just live my life, and it's gonna, whatever's going to happen is going to happen?
No, there's a bit of that element in there, but no, I don't consciously say I'm not going to think about it. One has to think about it, at least for a little bit. But what can you do? As I said, one foot in front of the other, and then I continue to do what I can do. But I don't think that the old tactics will work, even the sort of coalition building that once happened back in the 60s for the civil rights movement. I think that is, there's a blueprint there,
Right.
but I don't know if that's the same.
Well, I will confess that I do sometimes engage in diversion on purpose. Like, I water the plants and
Oh, yeah, of course.
I mean, but like on purpose to say when I feel overwhelmed, I just like make my world small.
Yes. Oh, yes. 100% I do that. Old movies,
Yes.
that kind of thing. Crossword puzzles.
Yes. And groups of friends, like, yes, little dinner parties that not
Amen.
big and fancy, just, that it
That's self-care.
it's self-care. It grounds you. It also, I think, reminds you what you're fighting for. When you are fighting, it reminds you that I'm fighting because that's lovely. This group of people is a lovely group of people, and I don't want to see any of them hurt, and I don't want to be hurt. And that there's beauty left in the world. It's important for me to remind myself of that when there is so much darkness around.
Mm.
So I don't know, there's a level setting in it, I guess, is what happens, or some sort of psychological barrier building, because if you let too much of it in, I learned this from war correspondents. So the Times just did this thing where they would have people come in, and it's like a lecture series, and so war correspondents came in for one of these things, and I sat around, and one of the questions they were asked was, how do you watch, bodies being blown to bits by day and still fight? And they were talking about how they had to build a bit of a wall mentally to do the work. Like, what was more important, to grieve the devastation, or to make sure that the world never gets to turn away from the knowledge that it happened? And for them, being the bearer of the news was a higher calling than their own grief. And so they would build a bit of a wall psychologically so that they could do their jobs.
But it may be different for you as an editorial, an op-ed writer, an editorial writer. For me, as a journalist that had to report the most devastating things, that I was able to compartmentalize it as much as I could. A lot of therapy or whatever, but it still sticks. But I mean, maybe you will, what you're talking about when spending time with friends, and even, sort of backing up a little bit, that's a spiritual thing that feeds your soul. But also, if there is any optimism in it for me, I'm glad you brought that up, because I did not articulate this earlier, but that leads me to believe that there are more us than them. And I believe the last election was lost by us rather than the other side winning.
Really?
Because of apathy. Because of that, some people from 2016, from 2020 had that attitude like, well, I'm done. I can't take it anymore. And I think that they believe, for them, whether it was wrong or right, that the choice, whatever they had, that it was not acceptable. They did not like it, whether it was misinformation or whatever it was. So I believe that the folks like us who are on our side, that we lost more than the other side won. And so I think if there's another election, and if this is my hope, that there's enough inspiration to beat the other side, there's more of us that's going to allow it. But then when you see what's on the other side, it's
how do you rebuild a coalition? And I asked that question for this reason. What is the appropriate response that people should have to constituencies that supported or increased their support for Donald Trump and are now suffering because of that?
You're talking about Black people that voted for him?
Not necessarily. Well, that would be too, but there were a lot of Latino people in and around Detroit who were upset about the Palestinian issue, and now it's going to be worse because Trump shared, the IAI images of, shopping mall basically there. We have Venezuelans in Florida who were very big for Trump, and now he's deporting Venezuelans. We have Cubans who have been in Miami who have been kind of traditionally more conservative, and now along with the Venezuelans and the Haitians, they're on that list of people who are losing rights. How do we not, there's a knee-jerk Schadenfreude reaction, which is you
Gloat.
You
I told you so.
Yeah, but how do you not have that, or is it okay for people to feel that way?
I think it's okay. I mean, look, at some point, if you want the numbers, you have to allow those people in. But I think that that there's a certain reality that one has to admit to.
Right.
A lot of this is your fault. You contributed to what is happening now, and now you have to stew in your own juices, right? To borrow a cliche. And so I think it's okay because it's true. And the truth, as I always say, the truth is often insulting.
Listen, I accept that, agree with that. I have one caveat to that, though.
None.
Which is not even gloating, but accepting or finding even a smidgen of joy, or not even joy, but satisfaction in the suffering of another human being destroys a bit of you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see my people have their moral authority compromised. I see what's happening to them who support Trump and how their moral authority has, if they ever had any, it is shattered to the ground. I don't want the same fate for us.
But are they your people?
Who?
You say, I don't want to see.
I'm talking about black people. Not black people.
All skin folk ain't kin folk.
No, I understand it, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, I don't want. It is tempting to find satisfaction in being right on the right side of this moment and saying we voted in the right way overwhelmingly, and more of you did not, and now that's coming back to bite you. I don't want to find satisfaction.
I don't find satisfaction.
I don't find any satisfaction yet. No suffering. I don't. It is true, but I feel like it gives away a bit of me on a soul level.
Yeah.
If I allow myself.
I agree with you, but for me, it's almost like a parent-child relationship. Like the parent says, "I told you if you did that, what the outcome would be," and so now you see that. So next time, perhaps you should conduct yourself or make a different choice. I see it that way. And it's not gloating. It's not finding satisfaction. It's just I think that you have to give people a reality check, and they have to accept that what they did was wrong. And then, but I believe you can move on. But there has to be an acknowledgement that, okay, we screwed up. I don't, when you talk about people voting callously, I believe that was a callous vote, because I believe they voted against their own interests. And the thing that I find about liberals that's always disheartening for me is that they tend to shout down or shoot their allies. And so the person in the White House, the next person in the White House, who's going to be better for you? Is it the protest vote that you're going to protest because you don't, whatever or is it the actual person who you can find who's going to get you to the closest outcome that you want?
Do you believe, do you follow in the logic that Democrats were somehow too woke in this election and that was a problem?
That's a tough one for me because, yeah.
You do?
I don't believe in, look, I know that the term woke has been co-opted to mean something else. It's a pejorative, right? And it wasn't meant, and it shouldn't be a pejorative. But I do think that there is, that we have a certain purity test about people. We have a purity test. I mean, liberal. I'm not a Democrat, but I mean people who are liberals. Or people who have a more liberal sort of view of the world in general. I believe that, that liberals have this purity test about people, especially politicians, that one must be perfect, right? And if you don't 100% agree with me, then I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote for you, or I'm going to do something else. When conservatives, they don't do that. They fall in line. Look at who is in office right now. Look at who's running the Department of Defense. Look who is the National Security Advisor. Look who's the Director of National Intelligence. Look at all of these very flawed people who are in positions of power and who are running the country right now. And I believe if Democrats had sort of followed that model, we would be in a different place right now.
But it comes down to very specific things, right? So the postpartum research, the postmortem research, not postpartum, the postmortem research on the election shows that the anti-trans advertising was incredibly tested.
Yeah.
And there are liberals who make the art like this shouldn't have been the hill we died on. But I have a hard time with that, because just because it's effective doesn't mean that I don't see people bullying the smallest kid on the playground. I mean, like, this is a tiny group of people. None of what they were saying.
But who's going to protect that group of people?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So there's a principle here. Either you're going to stand up and protect this population, or you're going to say it's such an effective line against us that we can't do it. And that's a decision.
I don't think it's such an effective line against us that we can't protect the population. I think it's all in messaging. The whole point of politics in an election is to win. And so I remember when same-sex marriage was on the ballot. As gay men, I think gay men realized where they were in the messaging. Sometimes it was top of mind, sometimes it wasn't. Most of the time it wasn't, right? And that it wasn't an issue then. Mm-hmm. I think that you have to, read the room and understand what is the best messaging. And I think it's also for the people who may be in that group to understand what is happening in the moment. And so I don't believe that it was the best messaging. I think that in many ways that Democrats gave their opponents something to fight against. It sort of handed them the ammunition, so to speak. But it was a tough place to be in because Democrats want to protect transgender people, right? And by the way, most of those policies was a Trump era policies, but they were just better. They were able to better message the whole thing.
So if the Republican line is Democrats don't know the difference between a man and a woman,
mm-hmm.
what's the retort to that?
That Democrats don't know the difference between a man and a woman?
That ran all over.
Yeah, it was what is a woman? What is a
party that doesn't know the difference between a man and a woman? And that was an anti-trans ad that said the Democrats believe that men could be women and men could have babies.
In the moment, I don't know. At the moment, I would say it's obvious that Democrats know the difference between a man and a woman, but Democrats also know the difference between being human, treating people with a certain degree of dignity and humanity, and understanding that we should not be using the least of these to message politically.
It is the bullying for me.
Yeah,
it is. We know trans people. Very often, their stories are harrowing,
mm-hmm.
tragic.
Mm-hmm.
They have been around a lot of tragedy. They have had friends who did not survive. And their numbers are not large, even though they try to make them out to be this massive group of people. I don't like the bullying. Yeah. The bullying gets that works me, and I resist all of the political analysts who say, let's just move on from this. Let's don't talk about
No, I don't believe that.
I believe,
but we have to. Again, elections are about winning. Just think about the issues that are important to us, and were elections in the past where they won or lost on those issues, and where were those issues in the messaging? If you think about, let's say Carter. Did he win or lose on Black rights or gay rights or whatever, or Bill Clinton, did he win or lose on those issues? What issues were important to the American people? And are trans issues important? Of course they are. Is it the top issue for us? No, because as you mentioned, a very small part of the population, which Democrats want to protect.
Right. But you don't always set the pace, right? So if your opponents, if that's their messaging, then it's going to come up in the debate as a question. Now you have to be on record. You can't walk around it. You have to be straightforward. So it can be a central part of a campaign without you ever trying to make it as number one part of it. And I just believe that on some level, a healthy society has to always stand up for vulnerable people. And I don't need anyone, and I don't need to understand everything about how trans people feel and when they have surgery. I don't need to understand any of that. I know this is a human being. I do not believe in human suffering. I do not believe in using the state to make a person suffer. I don't need to understand all of your journey and what you're going through to see the humanity in you. The problem I have is that Democrats could not find a way to effectively say that.
Yeah.
This is not about the machinations of bathrooms. It is not about when the pills are given and the hormone blockers. It is not about the surgery. It is about bullying. It is about humanity. It is about you. I will not stand on this playground and let you pick on the small one.
Yeah.
And that seems to me so easy to say. And maybe I'm naive in saying that it's easy to say, but it seems so easy to say. And the fact that we got, tangled in our shoelaces and couldn't figure out how to message that.
Yeah.
And kind of listening to people who said, don't even go there. We have to win and, kind of leave this issue and leave these people.
Yeah. Then you have to go there. And you did. That's what I was going to say as I dropped my phone on the floor. That's what I was going to say is that this is all about messaging. There is no doubt that what you said was right about caring about people, the least of these, all of that is right. But again, I believe that this is about messaging, and I believe this is about Democrats being better politicians and coming up with ways to say those things and articulate those things that you just mentioned. And I think a smart and savvy Democratic Party with leaders, younger,
To become a consultant.
younger leaders that understand how to message that would have worked better in the moment. So again, it's not about those things. Of course we care about those things, but what is a messaging strategy? Because Republicans are much better at doing it than Democrats are. So that's how I feel about it. But I don't believe that, you shouldn't, talk about those things. So I shouldn't.
DJ brought your book, but he didn't bring mine. See that? Yeah, DJ is. See how shady he is? You got yours.
But the other book, I have a book that was styled and then dedicated to James Bond called, it was, he's at the fire next time. Mine is This Is the Fire.
And you would bring it?
No, I thought he had it. It should be here. I brought this one. That's the latest one. But where's your book?
That's what I'm saying. DJ didn't put it out.
He didn't put it out. So Charles, just real quick, I'm gonna end where we started.
Okay, go.
Do you think it would be better for us if we did what you did and moved to, I guess you.
Yeah, I believe that.
No. But I mean, what do you think in this moment? Because I do have to say, when I come back to New Orleans, right? I feel more at home, I believe, than when I'm in New York. And maybe it's because I grew up in Louisiana. But there is this sort of longing like, oh, maybe I should move back here. It's so beautiful. It's so lovely. It's, and it's Black.
There you go. And it is, I think one thing that was clear to me when I moved to Atlanta was that, I had not fully appreciated that you and I experienced a talented version of Blackness in New York. We were around Black people, but it was so incredibly curated to be only the achievers class, which is what Holly Peterson calls it. The achievers class, the people who are at the apex of all industries, that you weren't experiencing the full breadth and depth of Blackness. Mm-hmm. And it hits you when you return to the South. That means, and also what you lost by not being in connection with that on a regular basis.
But also it's just that, I can't explain. It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling of comfort, of beauty, the way people move. And maybe it's just that New York can be so impersonal sometimes.
No, what you're experiencing is how like you feel almost all the time. Yeah. They're in their own culture. They're the majorities, and there's so much comfort in it. And the discomfort is when they go to the Northern neighborhood. They want the beef patty, but they don't want to stay over in that neighborhood. You know what I mean? And so what you feel, that sense of home and comfort and the shoulders relaxing, that's how they feel all the time. That's what the idea that it is rare for us, also a travesty.
Yeah. But you know what? I feel that way in Philadelphia. I feel that way, but I don't feel that way in Atlanta. We're going to have to talk about Atlanta.
You're a realness. You live there.
I lived there for 7 years.
You have a negative experience with Atlanta.
I just don't know. I felt like Atlanta for me was too.
No, I mean, it's a regional city. It's the capital of that part of the South, but it is landlocked and it is drawing from a lot of other Southern cities.
Yeah.
And that's a different flavor.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.